Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Big Factor here on the Big Play Sports Network. Ryan Tyler, Jack Rourke, Nick Padone. It is Monday, March 10th, 2025. Guys, we have absolutely no time to waste. News broke yesterday that broke the world. Myles Garrett is returning, well, to the Cleveland Browns. I should say returning, but there's a better word for that. He was still on the Cleveland Browns, but he agrees to a 4-year extension with the Cleveland Browns that'll average him about $40 million over per year, I should say. That makes him the richest non-quarterback paid in NFL history. This includes $123.5 million guaranteed to number 95 to stick around in brown and orange for this foreseeable future. You talked about Cleveland to Canton. Well, it turns out it looks like that's going to be the route that Myles Garrett is headed down as he gives in. I don't know if I should say gives in, but at the end of the day, he did, and he remains a member of our Cleveland Browns, guys.
Yeah, it's so cool that it was never about the money with Myles. Like, he talked about it on Radio Row, like he just wanted to go and find a way to win, and it's awesome that Andrew Berry was able to formulate a plan in the last week to find a way to get Myles Garrett to come back because he wants to win and be in Cleveland. Just kidding, of course. Obviously, he got the money that he wanted the whole entire time, whether it was a ploy, a tactic, a holdout, whatever. 95's back in Cleveland, so that's pretty good though, guys, right? Anytime a Hall of Famer's on your roster, you can't be that mad.
It's definitely the news itself is net positive for sure. You can't debate that. Getting the best defensive player in the NFL under contract for the next 4 years, $40 million a year, no trade clause, so we have assured ourselves that this is not going to happen again. It's a good thing. The weird thing though is that Myles Garrett didn't need to do any of this. I think Myles Garrett could have gone and sat down at the negotiating table and said, hey, GoogleFootballReference.com/Myles Garrett. I am the best defensive player in the league, and I deserve to be paid as such. I deserve to be paid the highest non-quarterback salary in National Football League history, and he got just that. So I don't understand why the Radio Row thing needed to happen. I'm honestly quite puzzled, and I'm looking forward to when the moment comes where Myles has to sit down with the Cleveland media and answer some of these questions about what changed, why did this ever happen in the first place, how did we get here, and is there a plan that you are agreeable to? And I guess we'll find out throughout this week, throughout the coming months, as free agency nears, what that plan is for the Browns. But whatever it is, I think $40 million changed the tune of Myles Garrett real quick.
Well, there's another layer to that, right? Because we talked about it. Was this really something that Myles Garrett couldn't have just signed months ago before the Radio Row tour? Was this initial $40 million a year not originally on the table? I find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the value that Myles Garrett is. I don't think money had a problem in any of this. I think the same contract could have been signed months ago. So begs the case, why did Myles feel the need? To me, it says that Myles Garrett overplayed his hand. And to people on Twitter, they're coming up with there must be this concoction, this plan that the Browns gathered to convince Myles in this stage to sign that deal. However, I don't think that's the case at all. I think Myles Garrett realized he could either go one of two ways. You could be the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, continue to play for the Cleveland Browns, or you could try this holdout. You could take games off for multiple years. Well, hell, 2 years, we'll franchise tag you. You'll be 31 by the time this thing gets resolved, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And then your Hall of Fame career is a little bit derailed. Your case to be the greatest defensive end is certainly derailed. I think Myles Garrett just overplayed his hand and realized, hey, I have two options here. I'm going to take the one that gets me generational wealth. He already had it, but now generational wealth. And Myles Garrett gets to continue to play football and be the most dominant player on the defensive side of the game.
Guys, I wonder if something happened where maybe the money did go up. And obviously, don't get me wrong, a guy like Myles Garrett should be getting the maximum amount of money he can anytime he enters a contract negotiation discussion. But when you hear the way he talked about the Cleveland to Canton, like throwing Andrew Berry's words back in his face, the way he went on Radio Row, that seems like a guy who was more than happy to burn the bridge on the way out the door. He didn't care if he was back or not. He said his piece about the GM. How do you end up coming back? It had to be way more money, right?
I'll be honest. I think he was trying to get traded, like genuinely full stop.
Oh,
he
really?
doesn't believe that the Browns are a Super Bowl contender. You can't put that toothpaste back into the tube. Myles squeezed out his true, unfiltered, honest thoughts on Radio Row, and there's no putting that back. There's no coming back from that. And while he signed the $40 million, and Browns fans everywhere are going to be glad that Myles Garrett's back in a Cleveland uniform because he's going to be really good for the next 3 or 4 years and help the Browns get back on the straight and narrow, which we hope happens a lot sooner now instead of a full stripped down rebuild. I think he wanted out. I think he wanted to play for a Super Bowl contender, but he looked at the reality of his own situation and realized that's something that's not going to happen. And in fact, the one thing that could have happened would have been the Browns look to a team like the New England Patriots, who have a ton of cap space, who have the number 4 overall pick, who are no closer to competing for a Super Bowl championship than the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns probably told Myles, hey, your option is to go to this other losing team and hope that they extend you, or you could just stay here, become the highest paid non-quarterback in football history. Those really are your options. We're not going to send you to the Philadelphia Eagles and have the 32nd pick in this year's draft and the 31st pick in next year's draft, and that's all we get out of you. I think he had to come to that realization that there was just no other option other than to sign this extension with the Cleveland Browns.
Regardless of him signing this extension, and the money's always there, I still believe, like, to your point, Nick, it isn't about money. The money just came because that was the most logical move for Myles to make. I believe 100% wholeheartedly he did mean what he said. He wanted to go to a contender. He just realized his options.
It wasn't going to happen.
You know how the NFL works, and that's a credit to the Cleveland Browns for sticking their foot in the ground this whole process and staying true to the word that they're not going to trade Myles Garrett. Whether they truly believe in their plan, if they're lying to themselves, hey, sometimes lying to yourself is a good thing. You got to stay course, and they got Myles Garrett to buy in, whether he really wanted to or not. They made him realize that that was his only option, and that's a credit to the Cleveland Browns organization.
And Ryan, I have one more note on this, because I think one thing that hasn't been discussed is that LeBron and Clutch Sports through this process learned that the NFL is not the NBA because of the franchise tag, because of the just way that you cannot empower players in the NFL the same way that they're empowered in the NBA. Players are never going to be able to call their shot 100% and be able to dictate where they go. I think Clutch Sports learned that. However, I think what Clutch Sports also did, which is important for Browns fans to understand, is they sent a message to the Cleveland Browns as an organization that Myles Garrett has a voice, and that's a voice that we haven't heard for his first 8 years in Cleveland. He's been pretty content. He's fallen into line the way that the Browns and Browns fans like their players too. But what Myles did is he put his foot down and he said that I'm not standing for this. I'm not standing for this losing. I'm not standing for this poor culture. So I hope while this whole thing was a stink and it probably smeared Myles' image in the city of Cleveland a smidge, I think it sent a message to the Cleveland Browns, to Browns ownership, to this regime that lets them know that, hey, your best player is serious about winning. And you should probably try to figure out what you can do, because Myles realized that he has a voice and people listen when Myles Garrett speaks. Similarly to when LeBron James speak, people listen. Maybe Myles can't force his way into and out of situations the same way that LeBron can, but he definitely now demands that same caliber of attention and respect out of his bosses, which is a big win for Myles, and I think a big win for Browns fans that want to see this team compete for something meaningful in a short amount of time.
Well, the pen is to the paper. Myles Garrett's extension with the Cleveland Browns is official. He'll be brown and orange for the foreseeable future, but just a few months ago, the future wasn't all so clear, and I think some fans still have a little gripe with Myles due to his little Radio Row tour he took. We'll talk about that more when we get back here on The Big Factor. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Big Factor here on the Big Play Sports Network, and we're brought to you today, of course, like we are every single day, by our great friends at Fairway Ford Ohio. Fairway Ford is the biggest Ford truck dealership in the state. They have the largest selection of Ford F-150s as well as Super Duty trucks, and I can promise you they will not be beat on price by any other Ford dealers. Do not let a short drive to Canfield, Ohio prevent you from saving thousands, yes, that's thousands of dollars on your brand new truck. Fairway Ford, the largest inventory of new Ford trucks, lowest pricing, and the same hometown level of service. Visit fairwayfordohio.com. That's fairwayfordohio.com. All right, we're talking about Myles Garrett. The extension is done. He will be a Brown for the foreseeable future, the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, about $40 million a year. That's nice now, but you go back a couple of months, Myles Garrett's future as a Cleveland Brown wasn't so certain. In fact, a lot of people thought he was on his way out of here. Cleveland Browns stuck their feet in the mud, and now he is here for the foreseeable future. Guys, does Myles Garrett owe an apology to the city of Cleveland? Does he have to save face a little bit? I have a thought and a take on this, but before I do, Nick, I know you, not to say that this was your stance, but you had a thought. Do you think Myles Garrett has something at least to go back on and maybe right some wrongs in the eyes of Cleveland Browns fans?
I don't think he owes anyone an apology, just because this was always his business and his matter, so I don't think he owes anyone an apology per se. But usually when you get a big trade request or a contract dispute resolved, you're able to quickly put it in the rear view mirror. I don't think that's the case here. I don't think you're able to just put this in the rear view mirror and pretend that none of this happened. I think Myles Garrett, Andrew Berry, probably Kevin Stefanski as well are going to have to hear the noise at some point. They're going to have to meet with the media at some point and answer questions about how all of this went wrong. I think that will be his opportunity not to apologize to Cleveland, apologize to Browns fans, but just explain what happened, I think is what people are really going to look for. I'm not looking for, and I saw some of the chat on social media last night. People were looking for some sort of like apology video or statement. Like, I'm not expecting that. Like this was always his business from Jump Street. That's one of the, cons of being a professional athlete. Of course, the pro being that you get $100 million plus at the end of it. But imagine doing a contract negotiation for our jobs, or for the people listening at home, nurses and firefighters trying to do a contract negotiation publicly, not just in front of your peers that you work with, but in front of the entire world and universe. Like, of course things get weird. Of course things get ugly. So I don't expect Myles to apologize. I don't think he needs to.
I don't think he needs to apologize, but he does need to understand that sports and sports fans are very reactionary, and a lot of what Myles Garrett is remembered for in Cleveland is going to come out of the next couple of years post this contract extension, because there's two ways to go about this when you kind of accidentally or purposely make it known you don't want to be somewhere. When David Njoku requested a trade, after that was all solved, he embraced the city, caught a couple touchdown passes, and 85 is still beloved in Cleveland to this day. On the other hand, when Deshaun Watson originally was being recruited by all these different teams, he said he didn't want to go to Cleveland. And I think the first ever tiny bit of sourness towards Deshaun Watson was right when we got him. Is everyone's like, okay, so we got him, but because we paid $230 million for him. Like, he's only here because of money. He doesn't want to wear brown and orange. So, Myles, you got to be really careful with how you act the next couple of years.
I think it's outlandish and just flat out wrong to expect Myles Garrett to usher some sort of sentiment of regret or apology. It gets lost, and yes, football is a kid's game, and it goes for any sport. These guys are making millions of dollars, generational wealth, to be famous and play a kid's game. We all wish we could do it. But it's still a business, just like anything. The team is trying to do the best for their organization, and Myles Garrett is trying to get the best for himself and for his future, and of course his legacy, as he ultimately has said a million times over how important that is to him, as it should be. And I think Myles Garrett has done enough in his 8 years here, being the franchise cornerstone, being the best player in football, defensively at least, to be able to at least go out and maybe put a little public pressure on the Browns to say his piece, because quite frankly, well, he's deserved it. But I want to talk about this tweet from Aditi Kinkle-Bawala. She tweeted out yesterday talking about Myles Garrett when he was playing through injuries to both of his feet last season. He said he called out a few offensive teammates for their body language, and when she asked why, if he was so irritated, why didn't he just have surgery? Well, he said he wants to win. This is my purpose, and until it's not. And Aditi from this gathered, one, this has to have been brewing, and it isn't only about the quarterback, because that's been a big part of this. Is it truly the quarterback that will keep Myles Garrett here? We'll see. and the purpose that Garrett has never defined himself fully by football. I thought this was an interesting quote. In a game of chicken, this is a man who could easily go write anime or live abroad until he gets his way. Yeah, we all know Myles Garrett, Jurassic Myles. He loves other things than football, but football, of course, is the main driver. Was it simply, and it goes back to my comment about, I don't think there was some grand plan that they said that got Myles to sign this extension.
Agreed.
I just think he realized he had limited options, but it goes back to the quarterback, of course, most importantly. I guess now, does this cement the Browns take a quarterback at number 2 in this year's draft? And I think we all, at least me and Nick, I know, already thought it was in the stars. The Browns are taking a quarterback at 2.
Chad?
Oh, you're asking me? Oh.
Both of you.
I think so. I've
been saying take Shedeur since the Giants game, so I thought I was number 1 on the group of saying we should take a quarterback.
Independent of this entire Myles thing, because I think Myles knows, the Browns know, everybody knows that the Browns are not going anywhere until they address the quarterback position, until they find their franchise quarterback, their own Josh Allen, who, by the way, speaking of paydays, so their own Joe Burrow. Like, until they find that guy, sure, Myles will be back, and sure, he'll be content because now he's got $40 million annually going into his pocket, and a big chunk of that is fully guaranteed. But his legacy and all of these things that the Browns want to achieve, and Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry remaining employed by the Cleveland Browns, all depends and all hinges on them finding a quarterback. And I think something will happen this week in terms of veteran quarterbacks in the free agency market. But ultimately, with that number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft, I know now maybe people want Abdul Carter again because you could make the argument, pairing him with Myles sure would be a lot of fun. But I think everybody understands that until you address QB, it's just going to be more of the same.
Well, the draft is just over a little bit of a month away in late April. We'll see what the Cleveland Browns do. But yesterday was absolutely crazy around the NFL. Besides Myles, Josh Allen gets paid. DK Metcalf goes to the Steelers. Devontae Adams joins the Rams. We'll talk about everything that happened around the NFL and more when we get back here on The Big Factor.
So the one thing I'm...
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Big Factor here on the Big Play Sports Network. Ryan, Tyler, Jack O'Rourke, Nick Padone. We're sticking around the NFL, transitioning now to the AFC East, where quarterback Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills have agreed to a record-setting 6-year, $330 million contract through the 2030 season that will tie him to Buffalo. $250 million guaranteed for the Bills quarterback. That now supersedes the previous guaranteed record, of course, goes to Deshaun Watson, who we know all too well here in Cleveland, when he received $230 million.
The Deshaun contract was a steal.
It was.
Oh, wait, he's not. He doesn't play anymore.
Well, talking about generational wealth with Myles Garrett, you flip it over to now Josh Allen, who won MVP last season, has yet to make it to the promised land due to a guy named Patrick Mahomes, but I think a well-deserved contract for easily a top 3. You can place him wherever you want. Quarterback in the NFL who's gotten the Bills to be a postseason perennial contender, yet to get over that hump. But guys, you reward a guy with this contract when there's nobody in the NFL outside of maybe Patrick Mahomes that you can make an argument that you would rather have leading your team in the huddle.
Yeah, he's arguably one of the most likable players in the NFL. He's taken that organization from one that was arguably as downtrodden as the Browns. They might have even been worse than the Browns for a long time because they went 6-10 every single year, which is worse than going 3 wins in my opinion, because you feel a little bit of we're getting closer to something. But that organization was always so downtrodden. Josh Allen comes in, I think like 6 or 7 playoff appearances in a row now. They've won the AFC East. What'd you say it was? Like 3-4 times in a row now. It's incredible what that guy has done. And even last year, the least amount of weapons he's had in his career, the closest he's ever been to an MVP. That guy deserves back up the Brinks truck, whatever he wants and more. Josh Allen should get.
And it's this generation's version of, Breeze, Brady. When you've got one of these guys, you continue to do this. For Josh Allen, he'll probably never see the end of this 6-year deal, because in 3 years from now, they're going to do an even bigger one, and they're just going to keep stacking it up. Because when you have a guy like this, that's what you do. The Chiefs are probably going to do it with Patrick Mahomes at some point in the next 2 or 3 years. You never want these guys even getting close to free agency, because there's no reason to. And not to keep the conversation centered around Cleveland, but that's what the Browns' current conquest is, to find a player like this. And I get everyone would love a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen, but find your Burrow, find your Jalen Hurts, find the guy that is going to get you in the playoff conversation every single year, and then you don't have to worry about money. I don't have to worry about cap space, because you're going to keep just extending this guy until kingdom come.
You know, I put Josh Allen as my winner of 2024, or was it? No, it's 2025, 24-25.
Yeah.
And he just keeps holding up
winning
to that role. I mean, you win MVP, you get engaged to Haley Steinfeld. Now you sign this absurdly rich contract. Good for Josh Allen. When you got a guy who keeps you winning and gets you to playoffs every year, you pay him, you keep him there. The Cincinnati Bengals need to do the same with Jamar Chase. We'll see if that happens. We're talking about highest non-paid quarterbacks. Well, he might reset that over Myles Garrett, who just got that title. But flipping it over to the AFC North, again, the Steelers, guys, they just traded for DK Metcalf. They send a second-round pick to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for Metcalf. He also signs a 5-year, $150 million deal with the Steelers. He pairs with George Pickens. Not certain that George Pickens will remain in Pittsburgh if he's going to give him an extension. But when you talk about a locker room with George Pickens, you add another strong personality, I think is the correct word to say, in DK Metcalf. This all adds up for what should be an interesting offseason, regular season as well for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and in their hopes postseason.
Yeah, there's just a whole lot of CTE and NBA youngboy going on through that locker room. I mean, like the fellas in that wide receiver room, they love to have fun. George Pickens is one of my favorite players in the NFL. Actually, I don't know if you guys even knew that. I love the way that he's cocky, has a little bit of swagger, will go up, make a big catch, push a guy a little bit. The Steelers are it's gonna be, the AFC North is the most fun division because it's like the Walmart of the NFL. It always has been. There's crazy fights breaking out everywhere, left and right, and you know for a fact that DK and George Pickens will either fight each other or maybe fight each other and then the other team in the same week. So it just adds on to the great division known as the AFC North.
Yeah, I mean, this is such an AFC North move. I like DK Metcalf a lot, but I thought that extension was an interesting layer of this. I mean, DK Metcalf getting paid $30 million a year.
Uncharacteristic of the Steelers organization.
The con artists.
Very weird for Pittsburgh. Also, too, kind of funny that DK Metcalf was saying all weekend and really all week, he's like, I want to be traded to a warm weather city with a stable quarterback situation where I could compete for a Super Bowl. 0 for 3 on that. Yeah. So I thought that was a funny layer of this. I like Metcalf. That was a big contract, though. I mean, I don't know how that one's going to age. So we'll have to see who's even going to be throwing DK Metcalf the football. That's the other path. That's the other piece of this. And obviously, we're recording this show, doing this show on Monday. So we don't know. I personally told you guys last Monday on Big Play Cleveland, I think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. So you're talking about content out of the AFC North, a quarterback room with Aaron Rodgers and whatever else they decide to do. And then he's throwing the ball to Metcalf and George Pickens. Buckle up.
The Steelers have always been so good at just taking whoever and bringing it and making it a winning culture. If you brought in Aaron Rodgers with DK Metcalf and George Pickens, that might be the greatest challenge of all. But hey, history will tell you. History will tell you.
Mike Tomlin could actually undo so many years of people talking about him during the playoff time by winning 10. If he wins 10 with this team, with these guys, COTY.
Well, that's the best part is you need to figure out who you're actually going to have throw into these guys.
Yeah.
You know, Justin Fields, they potentially want to bring back, but he's kind of mulling things out to see what the Jets have to offer. It seems like obviously Russell Wilson won't be the quarterback there this year unless foreseeing something. I don't think Aaron Rodgers will go there because I don't think that would work. I think they're more likely a Sam Darnold route would probably work better, but we'll see what happens there. But the quarterback problem, if you want to say solved, well, it's at least for a little bit resolved, I should say. In Las Vegas, Geno Smith gets traded to the Raiders. He reunites with Pete Carroll. I don't see that team doing anything this year. I understand Brock Bowers is a stud. But really outside of that, Jacoby Myers, I mean, you have no offensive line, no running back. It's a move to supplement maybe this year, a transition period with Pete Carroll there, but I don't see this moving the needle much for the Raiders.
No, this is going to be one of those nice TikTok slideshows, like random athletes in random jerseys. You'll see Geno Smith in a Raiders jersey in 3 or 4 years. This was never going to be a long-term thing. It'll be a nice little start out for Pete. They'll go draft a guy next year, arch to Vegas.
I don't know that I hate it as much as you guys do. I think the biggest
Really?
thing that the Raiders needed, and regardless of this whole season, the biggest thing that the Raiders needed was to develop some sort of culture. How many head coaches have they tried in the last, we could do the last decade, but we could also do in the last 5 years that have given that job a try and failed? They needed Pete Carroll to come grab the steering wheel and put the car back on the road. I think Tom Brady will help that. I don't think they had any good options at quarterback. When you look at where they're at in the NFL draft, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are both going to be gone. When you look at the free agent quarterback class and how much demand is out there, I don't know that somebody like a Sam Darnold would want to go to Vegas, is probably the best option remaining. Aaron Rodgers, what would that really do in Vegas? He's, a 40-year-old quarterback when you're probably looking towards the future if you're Vegas. I think Geno Smith is a good move because it's a guy with his head on his shoulders straight. He's not going to piss anybody off. He's going to help instill a good culture for the Raiders and work with Pete Carroll on whatever the future looks like while trying to be a watchable product in the now. I didn't hate this at all just because I think it's really what the Raiders need right now is a little bit of a stopgap, a little bit of a bridge to figure out what they're trying to become going forward.
I think it's certainly an upgrade going from Geno Smith to Aiden O'Connell and Gardner
Yeah.
Minshew, that hybrid that they had there. And maybe it's a sign that the Raiders, hey, they knew they weren't getting a quarterback a la Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders where they're sitting right now. Last big news out of the NFL. Devontae Adams, guys, headed to the Rams, pairing up with Puka Nacua, and they obviously brought Matt Stafford back. They traded him, no trade, he was a free agent, got cut by the Jets. 2-year, $46 million contract, $26 million in guaranteed money. Interesting move. You move on from a 31-year-old Cooper Kupp. You bring in an older guy in Devontae Adams, who's certainly, I would say, a top 10 receiver in the NFL. Age be damned. He's amazing. Obviously, his future in the Jets wasn't going to last. He now goes to the Rams, who, guys, hey, still Super Bowl contender, any way you want to put it. You bring back Matt Stafford. You were minutes away from really beating the Eagles. Who knows what would happen if it wasn't a snow globe game? And you still got Matt Stafford and Sean McVay, one of the most offensive geniuses that we've seen in the NFL in the last decade.
Yeah, for me, the only thing I have on this, why did they re-sign Tutu Atwell for over $10 million a year? Like, why did that come out of this? If you want any chance of keeping Cooper Kupp, I get that he's older, but you already have Puka, you bring in Devontae. Like, why did you need to go get a third receiver for $10 million? That's kind of dumb.
It's interesting. Like the last 2 years, Cooper Kupp, I understand 2 years ago injuries played a big part. Not so much this season, but he was faded out of the offense, it seemed like. It was fully transitioned to Puka Nacua's season, who was an absolute stud. Getting him as late as they did for the Rams is absolutely crazy. But now I said top 10 receiver. Puka Nacua might be a top 5 receiver in the NFL. So to pair them together will be interesting. All right, we got to take another break. When we get back, we're flipping it over to the Diamond. MLB news and notes from around the league. Garrett Cole, contract extension week. We'll talk about that and more when we get back here on The Big Factor. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Big Factor here on the Big Play Sports Network. Ryan Tyler, Jack Rourke, Nick Padone. We're flipping things over to baseball, going to the Diamond, news and notes from around the MLB. Guys, we start with Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole, obviously, last year dealt with injuries. He came back near the All-Star break and did wonders for the New York Yankees. But news came out not optimistic at all about an MRI result. Garrett Cole is. The expectation now is that he will miss time, potentially, quote, a lot of it. We don't know exactly what the future holds for Garrett Cole. Could he need Tommy John, miss a whole season? That would be bad news for the Yankees. They signed Max Fried this offseason. Outside of that, Carlos Rodon, Marcus Stroman, Clark Schmidt, and Will Warren. But losing their ace to the Yankees would be absolutely devastating, Jack.
It's a real bad rotation you just read off right there, Ryan. Yeah, I mean, this is I hate to say it because I actually like Garrett Cole a lot, going back to his UCLA days, and I'm a very anti-Trevor Bauer person, so their natural rivalry has always made me a Garrett Cole guy, even though that he's a Yankee. And man, it's so sad. Like last year, for his age, he came out and gave the Yankees a couple of good innings. But anyone who watched Garrett Cole last year will tell you that guy was a shell of his former self. In the playoffs, we kind of hit him around a little bit too, and we never hit anyone in the playoffs. So that kind of tells you all you need to know right there. But it's just so tough because you have him, and then Luis Gil, who is their best starting pitcher at this day and age and time, is out for I think 12 weeks. So like that's a really, really interesting rotation to start the year. I will say though, out of those names you read, like Max Fried's been a good pitcher. Rodon's solid. Stroman is like kind of past his prime. But Carlos Carrasco is fighting for that 5 spot, guys, in the Yankees rotation. I actually watched the highlights of his outing from yesterday. Only gave 1 run in 3 innings. It was a bomb. But that slider was working a little bit. So maybe we'll see Cookie start the year in the Bronx, guys.
I'm just saying, get ready for the Yankees to trade for somebody like
Skeens.
Skeens, yeah.
And Jared Jones.
What if Pittsburgh was just like, who are we kidding here? And they just decided to do it now.
1 year of Paul Skeens. That's all Pittsburgh deserves in their minds. I wouldn't be surprised if they went and signed someone like Dylan Cease.
Yeah, I mean, well, you got to think, because I want to say Zach Gallen is a free agent after this season, so if the Diamondbacks are struggling maybe halfway through the year, and I know I'm not saying it's likely to happen, then you could go, actually, maybe, I mean, Josh Naylor's the new face of that middle of the order instead of Christian Walker now, so they could be in trouble, actually. But, yeah, it's going to be tough to see how this shakes out, because, yeah, like, you could go get a Gallen type of guy, and maybe, I don't know, there's a very scary scenario, and let me put this one out into the world just to make you guys mad at me. There's a world where Shane Bieber comes back right before the All-Star break, pitches a couple of nice innings for the team.
Oh.
We know we don't want to pay him $16 million next year. Jason Dominguez, welcome to Cleveland.
If Shane Bieber, by the end of this season, is a New York Yankee, I will have a very hard time investing myself into baseball in general.
Yeah.
Oh, we got Austin Hedges. You'll be fine.
No, I won't be fine. I'll be in a fetal position crying if I see that. But speaking of big contracts, speaking of pitchers, Paul Skeens, it's no surprise he's not going to sign a big extension with Pittsburgh. They're not going to hand him the money, although he deserves it. I'm telling you, this guy is going to be the best pitcher in Major League Baseball in just probably next year and will be for the next decade. Well, the Athletics' Tim Britton has Skeens projected as signing a 10-year, $200 million contract with an additional $220 million in incentives. The Pirates don't speak that rich. They're broke. Teams like the Yankees, teams like the Dodgers, it seems like Paul Skeens is going to be there in the future. I'm going to absolutely hate it because you draft a guy like Paul Skeens, a small market team with the Pirates. You wish you could see out a big deal with him, but odds are it's probably not in the stars for the Pirates.
And that is why, as much as we laugh and talk about it, what Nick just said a couple of minutes ago really isn't that crazy. If you know Paul Skeens is not going to be on your roster in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and you're in the middle of a rebuild right now, and it's very hard to trade a guy like that. I totally get it. We had to do it with Frankie a lot later in his career. Paul Skeens' value, even though Paul Skeens, as you just said, will probably be the best pitcher in baseball for the next decade, probably plus even. He's like 23 years old.
Nowadays, yeah.
His value might never be higher than it is right now pre-ARB on his rookie deal. If they traded, just take the Guardians, for example. Like, if we wanted to trade for Paul Skeens, not that we would ever extend him, but you're looking at, we're giving them Quan, Bybee, Williams, DeLauder, Bo Naylor, Jonk, and probably like Cantillo or Doug Nikhazy. Like you're giving a team your whole entire future, and probably most teams like you'll get a Quan type guy back also, who's like a stud right now. If I'm them, I would so consider doing it, guys.
All right. Well, speaking of Quan, extensions for the Guardians. None yet. We'll see if that happens. We'll talk about the most extension eligible, who we want to see get an extension, who's the most likely, because those are probably different things. We'll talk about that and more when we get back here on The Big Factor. Hey, everybody. Welcome back into the Big Factor here on the Big Play Sports Network. Ryan, Tyler, Jack O'Rourke, Nick Padone. We're sticking it on the diamond, talking about baseball, flipping it over to the Cleveland Guardians. We're talking about MLB extensions, as this is, quote, MLB extension week. Whether it's not officially a thing, it is still a thing. Guards, I want to ask you guys, not who you most want to see an extension. We'll get to that. Who do you think is the most likely next extension candidate? Quan, Bybee, Lane Thomas, Zardo? Who are you guys thinking?
For me, I'm not under the impression that Lane Thomas will be back next year, so it's not him. Most likely, you said not what I wanted to do, right? But
Correct.
Most likely, honestly, I would take the Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada native Cade Smith as the next extension for this team. The one thing we've never been shy to do is, weirdly enough, extend our bullpen, which is usually like the most high risk, high reward thing you can do. So it's surprising that of all things we would go do it with relievers like we did with Clase a couple of years ago. He makes the most sense. I think they kind of want to see a little bit more out of Bybee. They probably want to see him do it one more time before they're comfortable giving him more than like $10 million a year. And Quan, I hate to say it, guys, I honestly think we're past the point of him being extended as a Cleveland Guardian. But
I don't like
That's
that.
the one I don't like that at all, because that's the one that I want the most.
me too. I think it's chalked.
I mean, that's a guy that means so much to what you want to do offensively as a baseball team. In the leadoff spot, I couldn't think of anybody else around baseball that I would want other than Quan. You know, that meme that he's just always on base. That's all you could ask for out of your leadoff guy. Not to mention, you look at the progression and how seriously he's taken his own development. Every single year since he's been in the majors, we've seen him get better and better, not just batting average. Now we've seen a little bit of power in the last couple years.
Great fielder too.
Tough. Great. I mean, that would be a tough pill for Guards fans to swallow. But you're right, Jack. I mean, it's now year 2 or year 3 of us pounding the table for a Steven Kwan extension. It's got to be right now. And the fact that it hasn't happened, because it's concerning. But there's always hope. And I think even at the All-Star break, there's always hope that things could get done. I'm going to hold out hope until there's no more to hold on to.
I would agree with you, though. I think if they are to extend him, it would be before August 1st of 2025. I think it's going to have to come either in this little window or over that break. You know who else I could see getting extended real quick? David Fry. Because he's not going to take a lot of money. He's hurt right now. So if there's ever a time to do it, to get him back as cheap as possible. I know he still has a couple years of ARB, but I think you could get him on a 2x8 deal really, really easily.
Earlier this February, Mike Axisa of CBS Sports, he went through some key extension candidates. He said, quote, the Guardians and Quan could do something like $7 million in 2026, his second arbitration year, $10 million in 2027, his third arbitration year, and $15 million in 28 and 29. That'd be 4 years, $47 million, which could easily be bumped up to $50 million through an option buyout. You don't think they can get that done?
If Steven Kwan, and that's the tough thing, is every guy's different. Every guy's different injury history. Some guys, the second they will have a chance to get their pay, they will. Some guys won't. If I was Steven Kwan personally, I would not take 4x50 basically is what it was, right? You said? I wouldn't take that because I think he could get a $100 million contract somewhere.
Okay, and Quan for both of you, and I would say myself, is the extension you'd most like to see?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. That or I think I could. If you told me Bybee got extended, I would be just about as happy.
Fair enough. All right, we got to take one more break here on the Big Factor. When we get back, we're flipping it over to the NBA. Cavaliers, they get another win against the Bucks. LeBron James injury out 1 to 2 weeks with a groin strain. A whole lot more in the NBA when we get back here on the Big Factor. Welcome back into the Big Factor here on the Big Play Sports Network. Ryan Tyler, Jack O'Rourke, and Nick Padone flipping things over to the hardwood NBA. The Cleveland Cavaliers can't stop winning. They're 14 straight as they beat the Bucks in Milwaukee 112-110. Max Strus, a game-high 17 points and 9 rebounds. Of course, the best record in the entire NBA. The Cavaliers close to locking up the 1 seed when we get to the playoffs. It's going to be coming on right around the corner. Obviously, the Thunder will probably be the biggest favorite. I imagine the Celtics are still the favorite out of the East. I understand they're the defending champions. Guys, the Cavaliers right now are on an absolutely insane run. Kenny Atkinson, lock for head coach of the year. And right now, things couldn't be going better for our Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, it's just the way when you start to approach the playoffs, obviously basketball is a sport where you're going to need your big guns to get it done as much as possible. But anytime you're getting prepared to play playoffs in any sport, you need to know that your role guys need to be ready to go. And that's the thing, like even watching the Charlotte game, Nick, on Friday night, like it's not always just like Donovan 24/7. That's what's so crazy about this team is outside of the core four, I think we had 3 guys who had at least 9 points who weren't in the core four last night. It's just the team is predicated on depth and guys like Strus or Merrill or DeAndre Hunter like hitting their threes when it matters most. Like that's what's going to come down to is if those guys can pick it up, and that's how you're going to compete with the Boston. Is you're going to need 8 guys who are there and playing strong at the end of the year.
Yeah, you need this version of Ty Jerome. You need this version of DeAndre Hunter that we're getting right now. It's great that you have a Donovan Mitchell always that could take over and win you a playoff game like we saw him do against the Orlando Magic in the first round last year, where he literally needed to grab the Cavs for a couple of those games and drag them through the first round of those NBA playoffs back in 2024. But this team's assembled differently. Kenny Atkinson has adapted that 2015 Golden State Warriors identity where they get everybody involved. Think of, Sean Livingston still haunts me in my nightmares with that pull-up jumper, and just the way that the Warriors culture enlisted confidence in every single guy on that bench. Kenny Atkinson's brought that same mentality to Cleveland. So you just hope come playoff time that you get this same iteration of DeAndre Hunter, Ty Jerome, even Isaac Okoro's hitting threes now. Like, this is what the Cavs need come playoff time. This win streak has been a lot of fun at 14. I wouldn't mind if that gets snapped at some point. Let's get a little bit of rest for all of these guys, not just the core 4, and have a memorable playoff run to remember here.
And the biggest difference, which is so nice for the Cavaliers, listen, no game's a cupcake, no game's a walkthrough. We get that. But the Cavs schedule remaining this season isn't something to be scared. The rest of the season, I should say, isn't something to be scared of, right? No more matchups with the Celtics. You play the Knicks twice, but at this point, it feels like the Cavaliers
the
most
Kings,
definitely
the Blazers,
have the Knicks number.
The Spurs without Wemby, Detroit,
and how
the Kings again.
And it's just so
the
massive
Bulls.
that you can go into the NBA playoffs, get these guys some rest. I mentioned that you're, 8 games ahead of the Celtics for that 1 seed still. Give your players a rest because that was a difference, right? Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs, first round, second round, had to play 40 minutes a game. He's probably not going to have to do that if they don't need him to, which would be super. But we flip it over to the Lakers, second seed in the West right now. Boston ruined their winning streak, but LeBron James suffered a mild groin injury. He's expected to miss 1 to 2 weeks. What does this mean for the Lakers? It's never good to hear a 40-year-old with a groin injury, but at the end of the day, it is LeBron James who has come through injuries his whole career. Not very injury riddled, and when he is, he's able to come back the same monster he always is, but not good news for the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, groin, foot, calf, back. That's what they say, right? Those are the 4 that never go away, no matter how long you try and get rid of them. You get that risk, and LeBron is gonna play at a high level for a couple of more years, and I don't know. I'd love to ask you guys if you think he would ever be comfortable or willing to transition into like a bench role, and maybe even play 15 minutes a night when he's older. But they're gonna start popping up more and more like this as time goes on. But the biggest thing is you just gotta get the King back healthy for the playoffs. You're gonna make it either way. He should maybe suit up 2 to 3 more times in the regular season. They need that guy in April and May. They don't need him in March.
I can't believe nobody's talked about the fact that LeBron does this every single year. This is just the March injury of 2025. He's going to go away for a week or 2 weeks, and he's going to come back in 14 days, and it's going to be like this groin injury never happened. And it was mysterious that it even popped up, and he exited that game. And then, he even said that, this is something that's going to be day to day. It turns out that it could be up to, a week or 2 weeks. he does this every single year. And it's exactly to Jack's point. It's to get himself right for the playoffs. It's to get himself these couple of weeks where it doesn't really matter, worth a rest. He'll be back for that regular season tune-up with about 7, 8, 9, 10 games to go. That's all he really needs to get himself going. The Lakers are currently still the 2 seed. They could probably maintain a 2 or 3 seed with Luka carrying the majority of the workload offensively. This is just, as someone that's followed LeBron's career for the last 2 decades, this is what he does. This is who he is. He's going to be back. This is nothing to be concerned about. And the Lakers are going to be a force, I believe, in the Western Conference this NBA playoffs.
This is also, you brought up an amazing point with that, Nick, the 2 weeks. Because there's always, like, you know that one guy on Twitter who every single year says that, like, like LeBron's hair's back. Will be like, LeBron goes to Germany to get steroids and hair transplants right before the playoffs every single year. And I love that guy and his theory on the internet. So I didn't even think about that. But yeah, so for a select minority of Twitter users, LeBron is in Germany right now, confirmed.
All right, let's go off the court for a minute. News broke Monday that Stephen Curry has accepted a role with his alma mater, Davidson, of course, as an assistant general manager for their basketball program. Curry becomes the first active player in U.S. major sports to take on an administrative job with an NCAA team while playing. It seems like we're just getting more and more players getting involved in front offices, and maybe that's just a recency bias thing. We just had Eddie George, Bowling Green. I mean, of course, Deion Sanders. Interesting, Woj goes to be the general manager at St. Bonaventure. Cool move for Curry, as, you know, he's transitioning to that point where, you know, obviously out of his prime, still a generational player, one of the best players in the NBA, but maybe a little bit look into the future. Stephen Curry off the court getting an administrative role at his alma mater.
This is a weird one because I can't speak too much on this because I don't know exactly what the college basketball GM is doing, because I know for college football on that side of the spectrum, for when they have these GMs come in, it is all NIL fund. Like, I think all they're doing is just like peddling in the money, but not peddling is the wrong word to use because it's not illegal, but money coming in back and forth. How's it getting allotted to these players? So if college basketball is similar, that would make sense. Like, Curry goes out, has dinner with some alums, gives them some money, whatever. Under Armour's going to get involved one day, and it'll all be happy and well for Steph and his coaching career.
This is an advisory role. Like, the 12th seed in the Atlantic 10 assistant general manager job is an advisory role, and I think it is just an opportunity for Steph to reconnect with his alma mater at Davidson, help them build up this basketball program a little bit. He's going to be hands off. I saw people speculating, like, is this the end of Steph? I mean, come on. Like, they literally did just lose to St. Bonaventure and Woj. So maybe Davidson's president and AD saw that and they were like, wow, Woj is cooking over there with the Bonnies. We need to get Curry on the horn and get him involved in our program right here, right now, because they just lost to Woj on Saturday. So yeah, now Steph back involved with Davidson, which I'm sure is great for him, great for Davidson. Like, I don't think this is a major story by any stretch.
Hey, I love to see it. A new players movement. Just last year, Andrew Luck accepted the GM position at Stanford, his alma mater. Jack, we have 30 seconds. NHL deadline is passed. What's up?
The biggest name at the trade deadline, Brad Marchand, Stanley Cup champion, Boston Bruin for well over 15 years, traded to who? The arch rival Florida Panthers. I mean, this is a sports as good as it gets. Your star, been in Boston forever. Trade him to the team that knocked you out the last 2 years. Katie to the Warriors. Hockey version, question mark?
All right. Hey, we're out of time. We appreciate everybody tuning into The Big Factor here on the Big Play Sports Network. Ryan, Tyler, Jack Rourke, Nick Padone. Appreciate you watching The Big Factor. Huge thanks to Garage Beer. Huge thank you to Fairway Ford. Everybody have a great day. Peace out.